Halloween has always been my personal favorite holiday. As an Imagineer for decades, I was able to celebrate that holiday during our yearly festivity there in Glendale. Also, to talk to the Imagineers who created the Haunted Mansions worldwide. So, let's get the skeleton key out and unlock the secrets of this most special place. To whom, or should I say, in the spirit of the season, to whom it may concern, this is Disney Journey, and I'm retired Imagineer Jim Shull. This is the time of year when my thoughts turn to the Haunted Mansion, which is my personal all-time favorite ride in any of the Disney parks. I had the rare opportunity of having a personal guided tour by the legendary Rolly Crump through the mansion, and we'll get to that during this episode. And I'll also be providing a ranking of all the Haunted Mansions worldwide. So let's grab a shovel and let's dig in. Each time the family car headed to Anaheim, I made a demand, a decision that I had to ride the Haunted Mansion. From the very beginning, from the very first time I rode it, I loved the Haunted Mansion. I stood there the very first time to decide whether the floor dropped or the ceiling rose. As long as there was a Disneyland in Anaheim, there was going to be a haunted house. It moved around. It was located on Main Street, USA, until it finally ended up in New Orleans Square. The house itself was built and there in its location for many years while the Imagineers were working on the New York World's Fair in '64. But after they were free, they went ahead and finished the attraction, combining the Omnimover system with a whole range of illusions that were both classic and modern. The ride itself was built. The show building was built. The ride system was built. The actual sets were installed very quickly because it was decided to treat them theatrically, which meant you could build them off-site and truck them in and install them the way you would do a theatrical stage play. After much delay, but with smart decision making, the Imagineers and Disneyland opened the Haunted Mansions to guests. It was immediately a success, but there are many questions to be asked, and we now know through the papers there at the Disney Archive some of the interesting stories, such as 2 elevator shafts were built, but only 1 elevator system was purchased. There was a decision to buy the second elevator system, which was there when the ride opened. The Haunted Mansion opened to guests in New Orleans Square in August of 1969, but it evolved. It was built and there in its location along the banks of the rivers of America for quite a long time, while the Imagineers were occupied in New York City for the World's Fair. When the time came that they had bandwidth, they returned to working on the Anaheim version. Now, the ride was going to be the Omnimover, which was bulletproof. It was a known commodity. And building a facility was a pretty easy thing to do. But what was clever about it, among all the other clever things, was that the sets you see were theatrically built. They were wood, they had paint, they had wallpaper, and they could be installed very quickly, which means there's documentation that as late as July of 1969, the ride was still not done. Today, a ride is done and turned over to the operator months before it's opened because they want to test and adjust it and make, little changes that, they find. But not so back then in the 1960s, not in Disneyland, not in Anaheim. All the happy haunts have been busy over the decades since the mansion opened to guests, with many subtle and surprising additions. Things have gone into the mansion and then been taken out of the mansion. And you can see this with sculptures and stonework and brickwork. Those ghosts are very busy, and they work for free. Every guest who left the Haunted Mansion returned to the world of the living by traveling on the speed ramp. Personally, I always find it very strange that you had a Gothic haunted environment and the only way out was to get on a motorized, rubberized mat that took you to the surface. But that's not what interests me here. The roof above the speed ramp is what I want to call your attention to. There was an unkept lawn, and it was a back of house area, which meant no guest could ever see it unless they were evacuating the ride. On that lawn, the cast members had procured and placed statues of pets, animals, and it became known therefore as the Pet Cemetery. Over time, word got out, and the Imagineers decided to bring that back of house feature into the queue in front of the Haunted Mansion so everyone could enjoy it. And as a result of that, something that was very organic, never planned for, not in the original design, we have to thank for the Pet Cemetery.
The mansion drips with detail, and some of it is surprising, like the elevator door cladding or the flooring, which is supposedly wood, or the wall covering, or the wallpaper, or the paintings of all the dearly departed. These are things you generally do not see because your attention is focused on the things you're supposed to look at, like our little friend here taking a rest in the coffin, or the dead plants, or the doors that flex outward as your dune buggy rocks in the hallway.
The Haunted Mansion ride system has failed. And when it does, the operator comes along and lets you out of your dune buggy and escorts you to the surface. Now, personally, I find that not such a bad thing to know because it gives me an opportunity to study and to look at and to document all the ride. Now, I did this before I was ever an Imagineer, and I kept those photographs, which I'm sharing with you here in this episode. But what was interesting also is another time when Rolly Crump, the Disney Imagineer, personally escorted me down and showed me everything. I remember being in the ballroom with Rolly, and he showed me behind the fireplace. And that's when I really knew, and it sunk in, that these were theatrical sets. They were built as you would build any Broadway or off-Broadway stage set, and they were brought in. And the illusions could be very simple. In the fireplace, there was a bit of, well, cellophane that had a fan, and it had a red light with a gel on it that created the ghostly flame that you saw as you were riding in the dune buggy looking down into the ballroom. It's such a simple effect when you know it. But at the time, in its holistic illusion design, it was totally and utterly convincing. And I have Rolly to thank for that. I also have Rolly to thank for this. Rolly, as we were walking through the ballroom, said, "Come over here and sit. Sit here at the bench of the organ." It came out of the 20K movie, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and now it's over here. And I want to take your photograph of you sitting here. You know, there are some things you just cannot unsee or unremember. And this was a request I was more than happy to fulfill because when Rolly Crump asked me to sit on that organ bench, I did.
As we stood in the ballroom, Rolly pointed to the glass because he had another story to tell, which was the time that the glass had a crack in it. Now, the glass is enormous and you just really can't take it out. And so they drew around that little shattered bead to make it look like a spider web. They were clever, those Imagineers. They were also clever to procure all these items here in the attic. A lot of it was junk, and some of it has fallen apart. Some of the effects, well, they were simple, but they were all effective, and they made a point that you were in a place that maybe you shouldn't be. And again, calling your attention to the attic means that you're not looking behind you because right there in the attic is also the roll-up door into the service bay because the dune buggies, when they need a tune-up, have to go somewhere. You come out of the attic, down the ramp, outside the mansion, down along a very straight path, and you're on your back. So again, you don't look at things that had so much detail, lovingly detail put into them, like the dust or the trees. You do look at the old caretaker and his dog because they have seen better days. You don't also tend to look up at this horrible face or off to the side at the artificial bushes. You will notice things like this ghoul who looks like it's popping out from a concrete headstone, which in fact is simply a bit of fiberglass with a speaker mounted behind it. You do move beyond this tomb into where the hitchhiking ghosts are.
And there you see the hitchhiking ghosts themselves asking for a lift. Once you disembark your doom buggy, you pass by Madame Leota, and then you exit into the real world through these turnstiles. They were efficient, but they seemed out of place. Still do. A place you won't go, though, is here, to the back of house area where they keep the stanchions. That area has changed a lot, and it continues to change, most recently with the addition of a shop. I admit, as I said in an earlier Disney journey, I'm not a fan of the shop. I know what they try to do, but it just doesn't fit in. Maybe with a little paint and a plant, dead plants, it'll get better. The Haunted Mansion in Disneyland was a proven success, which led to the obvious question, where does it go next? And the equally obvious answer would be the Magic Kingdom there in Florida. Not to a New Orleans Square because they weren't going to have one, but they were going to have something similar, Liberty Square. And so that second Haunted Mansion was built in Liberty Square on the rivers of America. It was a Tudor structure, and it had some Gothic overlays, and it fit perfectly there in that environment. The ride was then lifted to be built in Tokyo Disneyland, but there it was going to be placed in a weird location, right behind their Dumbo in Fantasyland. Part of the reason is Tokyo needed an e-ticket attraction, one that was proven. And also, the Japanese guest accepted the ghosts, the happy ghosts, as part of the environment, part of the storytelling. They didn't look at it as horrific or terrifying. They looked at it with the mood, the idea of these are all grim, grinning ghosts, and they mean me no harm. There is no Haunted Mansion in Disneyland Paris. However, there is a Phantom Manor, which took its cues and inspiration from some of the original designs when the haunted house was proposed for Anaheim. A carriage house was designed and built, well, at least on the model. Phantom Manor gave way to Mystic Manor, which is in Hong Kong Disneyland. And that in turn leads me to this question, which is what park has the most scary Halloween? Haunted Mansions are all Halloween based, or at least conducive. They lend themselves to Halloween. But there's a difference between having a house that's spooky and a Halloween event. Now, I personally believe that Hong Kong Disneyland, hands down, has the scariest Halloween of any of the Disney parks. And it's ironic that it's in a castle park, which you think of as being friendly. But it's not in Mystic Manor. Ooh, that'd be too simple. It's actually an Adventureland. Because there in Adventureland, it takes place in a flex space, a room, a building that has been used for many things. If you're a fan of Duffy and Friends, this is the building you could come and visit them in. And it's been used for many, many other things, including the Hong Kong Disneyland Halloween time event. Let's Get Wicked. It works. It's a weird kind of mix, though. It's a mix of the more horrific, scary parts of the Disney library, including some things that they made up, like Ghost Galaxy, and the Maze of Madness, which is kind of creepy, honestly. It has zombies and dead people and ghosts and stuff that is definitely not something you see in any of the other Disney theme parks. So backing up the truck or the hearse, you have to count on there being 5 Haunted Mansions and one with a cute monkey. If I listed them, this is what I come up with. Disneyland Anaheim is number 1, and the Magic Kingdom, unfortunately, is way down at the bottom. In the future, in a perfect world, we'd be able to celebrate the Headless Horseman and, taking the cues from Mary Blair, create a wonderful dark ride experience. But now we have this. We have Jack Skellington meeting up with the classic Haunted Mansion. In whatever its form, the Haunted Mansion has left an impact on all of us. We return to the carriage house, which means this episode of Disney Journeys drawn to a close. I'll have another new episode next week. So in the meantime, be sure to like, subscribe, hit the hype button and the bell notification button to be aware of new episodes as soon as they are released. Also, consider becoming a subscriber, just like these great folks, because their subscriptions help me to continue this channel to grow and thrive. I thank everyone, and I hope you join me because they get special privileges, like they get new episodes before anyone else. And now they also get bonus episodes with exclusive material that no one else will get. Oh, so on that note, I'll say goodbye for now from a very ghostly and haunted Lost Canyon.